here with my cousin Denise, who, as Sherry mentioned, is a daughter of a Pearl Harbor survivor. I just want to tell you a little bit about my Uncle Paul, Paul Brown. My Uncle Paul was serving on the USS Shaw at Pearl Harbor, and he was there on December 7, 1941. And for a couple months after the attack, he was missing. They didn't know what happened to him. And I think for a short time, he kind of reattached himself to another ship. And then when the USS Shaw its bow had been blown off in the attack, and temporarily attached a temporary bow, and they sent the Shaw under its own power, which was kind of a big deal. It had been damaged so badly, to San Francisco to get a permanent bow so they could participate in the war. And my grandparents, who lived in Lawndale, northeast Philadelphia, a section of the city, not far from the agency, sir, and they thought that my Uncle Paul had been killed in the attack on Pearl Harbor, because they hadn't heard from him, and they got a notice that he was missing in action. And anyway, it was probably, I guess, February of 1942, and my mother went to the movies at the Crest Movies, which was right on Rising Sun Avenue in northeast Philadelphia. And before the movies back then, there used to be black and white clips of the, the update on the war, what was happening, what we were doing, and it was from around support of the American citizens. And my mother was getting ready to watch the movie, and she was probably only in 7th or 8th grade at the time. But before the movie started, there was a black and white clip of the USS Shaw coming into San Francisco Harbor to get its repairs done. And my Uncle Paul was on the front of the ship, waving and smiling. And my mother recognized him, and she cried out, and they turned on the house lights, and they said, what's the matter? She said, that's my brother, he's missing. And so at the end of the movie, they cut the piece of film. They don't have films anymore, but back in the day they did. They cut the piece of acetate, of plastic film, and they gave it to my mother so she could bring it home and show my grandparents that Paul Brown was alive. He was in San Francisco. And then they contacted him through the Red Cross, and they were able to discern that he survived the attack and that he was alive and well. And I remember my Uncle Paul telling us through the years, he said, Pearl Harbor was really a very, very difficult experience, but he said it wasn't as bad as Guadalcanal and some of the other engagements that still were to come before the end of the war. And so unfortunately, my Uncle Paul died a few years back, and towards the end of his life, he really was able to overcome his post-traumatic stress and some of the struggles that he had over the years, and talk to children about Pearl Harbor and about his experiences. He was featured in many newspaper articles and so forth. And he really, I remember when I was in school, I used to, he would come over to the house, and I used to think that you could just sit him down and pull the information out of him and get a history lesson. And it wasn't like that. It was a very painful, difficult recollection for my Uncle Paul and for all Pearl Harbor survivors.